Who are you supposed to be?
Captain America.
Well, would you look at that? It's a fresh year, a new start, which means it's a new year for Marvel to release as many films and TV shows as possible and feed off our hard-earned dollars to have with their eggs, bacon and overpriced lattes for breakfast. With Marvel's first movie of 2025, Captain America Brave New World, coming out, let's revisit the 3 Captain America films that came before it with Chris Evans in the starring role. Because Marvel loves hiring blokes whose first name starts with Chris in their silly superhero movies for some reason. Anyway, now that you're done playing some baseball and eating an apple pie while watching a Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestling match, let's look at the most American superhero Marvel has created, starting with the first Avenger. But with that being said, I'm Azza the Pop Culture Viking, and with spoilers ahead, let's take a pop culture look into Captain America the First Avenger.
I can do this all day.
Oh, of course you can, of course. But unfortunately, I am on a tight schedule.
Now, before Disney bought the rights to Marvel with their billion-dollar hands, Paramount were the ones that were releasing the early MCU films like Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America. But even before those movies were distributed by Paramount, Marvel was struggling financially. Around the early to late 90s, Marvel filed for bankruptcy due to some poor deal choices and stock share values going down.
I declare bankruptcy!
Marvel had no choice but to sell the rights to some of their characters, but thanks to the major and most popular characters like Spider-Man and X-Men being very popular thanks to the animated TV shows. Avi Arad came into the picture thanks to his dedication to get Marvel on the big screen, which started with 1998's Blade and would follow on with X-Men and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
While those movies became massive hits at the box office, the return for Marvel was very low. I mean, they were practically giving away their characters for peanuts. However, by the early 2000s, Marvel was given a proposal where a deal was made to offer the rights to their air quotes B-list superheroes like Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, and Captain America being sold throughout the years, investing $525 million for 10 movies. Thanks to Kevin Feige as producer for 2008's Iron Man starring Robert Downey Jr., the financial and critical success of Iron Man would help kick off the MCU with follow-up releases with The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America the First Avenger. Now, when it was Captain America's turn to make his first big screen appearance, Hollywood had been trying for years to get Steve Rogers in cinemas. Development for Captain America was dated way back in 1997 for Marvel Studios, where in the 2000s an agreement was made to finance the film. However, a lawsuit arose between Marvel Comics and Joe Simon over the ownership of the Captain America copyrights, disrupting the development process of the film, with the lawsuit eventually settled in September 2003. After the settlement, the film rights were originally prepared to be offered to Warner Brothers, but thanks to the $525 million 10-movie deal, Captain America was included in the deal, giving Paramount Pictures the rights to distribute the film. And before you jump in the comments, yes, Captain America has had some movies in the past, but they were straight-to-TV movies. When it came to writing the script and figuring out the plot and story, Kevin Feige and Avi Arad thought of endless possibilities with Captain America. Avi Arad critiqued the Back to the Future trilogy as an influence in the story, and the character of Steve Rogers is a person from World War II, and imagined what a character from the 1940s would think of today's world. Yeah, going great apparently. Kevin Feige said that originally the film was going to have half of the story set in 1940s World War II, and the other half in the present day. But Captain America was put on hold during the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike, but in January 2008, Marvel Entertainment reached an interim comprehensive agreement with the Writers Guild of America that would put writers immediately back to work on various projects that were under the company's development. After the success of Iron Man 2008, Marvel announced the film The First Avenger, Captain America, which was the working title at the time, for release on May 6, 2011. David Self was hired to write the script as Captain America was his favourite superhero growing up as a kid, and Joe Johnston met with Marvel to discuss directing the film, where he signed on in 2008, which David Self and Joe Johnston have worked together on the Wolfman 2010 remake. Feige praised Johnston's directorial work on October Sky and The Rocketeer, and his special effects work on the original Star Wars trilogy to explain why he was an appropriate choice. Joe Johnston was also influenced with Raiders of the Lost Ark, which he also did the special effects on, as a way to not make the film feel like a period piece, and hired Christopher Marcus and Steve McFeely for rewrites. Other directors that approached the project was Jon Favreau and wanted to direct the film as a comedy, but he chose to make Iron Man instead. and Louis Leterrier, who directed The Incredible Hulk, viewed some of the concept art being created for the film and was impressed enough to offer his services, but Marvel turned him down. Can you imagine walking in with that much confidence and then Marvel going, "No, bugger off"? Now, before we continue, the studios did have concerns about releasing the film, especially to some of the countries that were not huge fans of the US of A. Kevin Feige and Avi Arad did, however, comment on those concerns, with Kevin Feige stating that Marvel is perceived pretty well around the world at that time, and comparing similarities to the way Stan Lee and Jack Kirby reintroduced the character in the 1960s. Avi Arad also stated that Captain America stands for freedom for all democracies, for hope all around the world, also praising the film is terrific and it speaks to the world and not just one place. It was also perfect timing to develop the film thanks to the 2008 presidential election, with US President Barack Obama winning the election. With Kevin Feige adding to his comments stating, "The idea of change and hope has permeated the country, regardless of politics, and that includes Hollywood." The creative team opted not to push Captain America to fight any members of the Nazi Party like in usual World War II movies, as their goals was to depict the conflict through the Marvel Universe's prism. However, the filmmakers didn't have any problems to feature Nazis in the film, with Kevin Feige loving the iconic Captain America cover where the character punches Adolf Hitler out. The team felt that using Hydra as the main antagonist would make them be true to the comic book's many aspects. However, Paramount opted against altering the American-centric title when distributing to foreign territories, instead offering international markets a choice between the official title and the alternative title, The First Avenger. Many international distributors chose to retain the original title, believing the franchise name to be more identifiable than the alternative and would risk losing ticket sales. Only 3 countries chose to use the altered title, which were Russia, South Korea, and Ukraine. The studio thought that China wouldn't release the film at all due to their policy limit for foreign film releases, but were surprised the film was released in September of 2011. In December 2009, director Joe Johnston indicated that he planned to start filming in April of 2010. He explained he sat with production designer Rick Hendricks and worked with 8 to 10 artists to storyboard the film. It was basically the team going, "Wouldn't it be cool if we did this and that or put this in?" Pretty much storming up cool and amazing ideas and seeing what the studio could afford. Ideas that made it into the film included the World War II 1940s setting, but avoiding Steve Rogers in the 60s and 70s like in the comics, and switching for the modern day. Other ideas included the possibility of Captain America leading the superhero team, the Invaders, in the second half of the film, with rumours speculating that the Submariner would be in the film. But Joe Johnston confirmed that the Invaders were a possible name for a squad of commando soldiers, which ended up being the Howling Commandos and not related to the comics. Guess Mr. Johnson forgot to check that bit of information. Other Marvel characters that would have made cameos in the film were Wolverine and Magneto from the X-Men, as both of those characters were involved in World War II in the comics. Even Wolverine and Captain America fought together in World War II. But unfortunately, due to 20th Century Fox owning the rights to the X-Men characters at the time before the Disney acquisition of both companies, the ideas of 2 X-Men characters making their MCU debuts in Captain America was scrapped. That honestly would have been insane if the X-Men were introduced that early. I mean, they're in the MCU now and made all the dollars, didn't they? But imagine them being introduced in Captain America: The First Avenger. But now let's look at the casting. We'll start with Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. Now, fans did question the casting due to his previous role as Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four films. Even though some fans didn't want him as Captain America, Chris Evans didn't want to do it either. Chris Evans declined the role 3 times, not because he didn't like the role, but out of fear of the effects of his career. But the studio were desperate to get Chris Evans on board, and after some convincing from Robert Downey Jr., Evans decided to take on the role. Also, Chris Evans only got paid $300,000 to play Captain America for this movie, which just sounds so wrong to hear nowadays. Marvel Studios later confirmed other actors considered for Captain America included John Krasinski, Channing Tatum, Chance Crawford, Ryan Phillippe, Garrett Hedlund, Michael Cassidy, Patrick Fulger, Scott Porter, Wilson Benthel, Mike Vogel, Dane Cook, Ryan McPartlin, Ethan Peck, Zachary Levi, Glenn Powell, Jensen Ackles, Wyatt Russell, and Chris Pratt. Some of these blokes ended up in superhero and MCU roles. Actually, Wyatt Russell, weren't you Captain America for 5 minutes? Other cast members include Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, who auditioned for Captain America but was offered Bucky instead. Hayley Atwell as Peggy Carter, which Keira Knightley, Alice Eve, and Emily Blunt were considered for the role. Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull, Toby Jones as Armin Zola, Dominic Cooper as a young Howard Stark, Stanley Tucci as Abraham Erskine, Tommy Lee Jones as Colonel Chester Phillips, and along with Neil McDonough as Dum Dum Duggan, Derek Luke as Gabe Jones, and Kenneth Choi as Jim Morita as members of the Howling Commandos. Other famous faces you see playing small roles in the film included Game of Thrones cast members Natalie Dormer and David Bradley, who also played Filch in Harry Potter. Jenna Coleman from Doctor Who fame, Laura Haddock as an autograph seeker who would go on to portray Peter Quill's mother in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and James Gunn, who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy films, kinda also sorta confirmed that her role in Captain America was Peter Quill's grandmother. And of course we get the famous Stan Lee cameo as a military general.
I thought he'd be taller.
Principal photography began on June 28, 2010 with the working title Frostbite, which sounds like a prequel or sequel to Snowpiercer, which Chris Evans would star in a couple of years later. It was announced that the film would shoot in London in late July and was expected to include scenes featuring key London landmarks. War scenes were filmed in September at the Royal Navy Propellant Factory in the Welsh village of Carwent. Filming was scheduled in the northern quarter of Manchester, followed by the Stanley Dock area of Liverpool, both doubling as the period's lower east side of Manhattan, and other scenes were shot in Liverpool's Albert Docks. Some filming also took place in Pinewood Studios, with Pinewood's A stage, their South Dock, and their underwater stage all being used by the crew. 6 months of filming also occurred at Shepperton Studios, with 9 stages being used. In July 2010, Kevin Feige said that both Captain America the First Avenger and Thor would be released in 3D. Director Joe Johnston did a one-day test shooting with a 3D rig rather than shooting in 2D and converting, and found it a nightmare due to the bulky gear, calibration issues, and restricted filmmaking options. Nevertheless, Joe Johnston said that he believes 3D is a new challenge and it's exciting. Feige insisted as well that the conversion would not compromise the film's image quality, as the decision to release the film in 3D was made early in development, and that an unprecedented amount of time would be devoted to conversion processes to render all the film's visual effects in true 3D. Oh yeah, I completely forgot about the whole 3D thing that happened in the 2010s. I blame Avatar for that. Reshoots were also conducted in the United Kingdom and in Los Angeles in April of 2011, including a scene filmed in New York City's Times Square on April 23, 2011. In February 2011, it was announced that Alan Silvestri had been chosen to compose the film score. The soundtrack album for Captain America the First Avenger includes the original score by Alan Silvestri, as well as the original song Star Spangled Man, with music composed by Alan Menken and lyrics by David Zeppel. The soundtrack was recorded at Air Studio in London and released by Walt Disney Records on July 19, 2011. With the set designs and props, the designers tried to create technology that could be built in the 1940s. With the story adding the Tesseract Cube technology that Hydra gets their hands on, the set designers used abandoned Nazi projects or actual vehicles from the period that were used as the inspiration. Daniel Simon, who was previously responsible for many vehicle designs in Tron Legacy, was hired as lead vehicle designer. Director Joe Johnston critiqued Simon's book Cosmic Motors as the reason to trust his influence, saying he's sort of the guy I wanted to be when I was designing stuff for Star Wars. The Red Skull's car was based on 2 Mercedes-Benz vehicles from the 1940s, the G4 and the 540k or the 540k, I don't know, whichever way you say it. While Captain America's motorbike was multiple custom-made Harley-Davidsons that were replicated to look like World War II service bikes with added weapons and gadgets while designed to perform stunt work. For the special effects and CGI, the film featured nearly 1,600 visual effects shots, which were split between 13 different companies. Captain America's shield, which serves as both a defensive tool and a weapon, came in 4 types: metal, fiberglass, rubber, and computer graphics. Prop master Barry Gibbs designed multiple shields, which one was called the Hero Shield, which was made of aluminium for beauty shots and close-up work, while the rest of the shields were created with aluminium faces with fiberglass back for daily uses and light to carry for the actors, and an ultra soft one for Chris Evans to wear on his back in case if something happened and Chris didn't get hurt. What do you mean if something was to happen? Visual effects supervisor Christopher Townsend said Chris Evans would practice swinging the practical shield so that he knew the arc and the speed at which he should move. We would take the shield from him and shoot the scene with him miming it, then we would add in a CG shield. For the character of the Red Skull, Hugo Weaving wore a latex mask conceived by prosthetic makeup designer David White. The visual effects team had to manipulate his face considerably as the mask was bulky and they wanted to make it look like tight skin wrapped around a very bony structure. They thinned out Hugo Weaving's cheeks and lower lip, hollowed out his eyes, and removed his eyelashes and nose to make him appear more like the Red Skull character. To prepare for the role of Captain America, Chris Evans trained for 3 months to bulk up to 30 pounds of size, which included 2 hours a day of weight training for 5 to 6 times a week, focusing on 2 muscle groups and no cardio, even though the Cap can sprint like it's a bloody power walk. He explained that his workouts also included working on different angles and replacing cardio with circuit training to avoid losing any muscle mass. His diet also included high protein, with protein powder, porridge, nuts, and fruits for breakfast, and after his workouts was high protein meals with well-balanced veggies and protein supplements. But wait, the comment section will say, isn't he short and skinny at the beginning of the movie? Let me explain. To achieve the appearance of skinny pre-serum Steve Rogers, most of the shots were done by a LA company called Lola that specialized in digital plastic surgery. The technique involved shrinking Chris Evans in all dimensions. The same scenes were shot 4 times, which included Chris Evans shot like a normal scene, Chris alone in front of a green screen, all the other actors acting against nothing with Chris Evans absent from the set, and finally with a body double mimicking Chris's actions in case a second technique were required. When Chris Evans had to interact with other characters in the scene, the crew had to either lower Chris Evans or raise the other actors on apple boxes or elevated walkways to make skinny Steve shorter in comparison. For all the close-up shots, all of Chris's fellow actors had to look at marks on Chris Evans's chin that represented where his eyes would be after the shrinking process. And Chris had to look at marks on top of the actors' heads to represent their eyes. The second technique involved grafting Chris's head onto the body double, which was used mostly when Chris was sitting or lying down or when a minimum of physical acting was required. I mean, it is a lot of work, but I'm sure for Chris Evans' health and safety, they wanted to avoid what Christian Bale did to play as Batman for Batman Begins. All the major CGI shots were completed during post-production, including using iconic American war propaganda such as Uncle Sam's recruitment poster for World War I and the We Can Do It poster from World War II for the closing credits design. But now here's the part where I give my personal review after a rewatch. In this film, Captain America makes his MCU debut as Steve Rogers, who was selected in the Super Soldier program during World War II, where he becomes a symbol of America and fights the evil Red Skull and his military group known as Hydra from terrorizing the world with the mysterious Tesseract. So, if you're wondering if I'm a Marvel or a DC guy, I'm a larrikin with these type of topics as I love both. For the DC universe, Batman is my favourite and definitely has the best villains. Bloody fight me. But for Marvel, Captain America is my favourite. Now, with this as the last Marvel film before the Avengers came out, while Iron Man is one of the all-time greats that kickstarted the MCU, the Incredible Hulk is the black sheep of the MCU, Iron Man 2 was okay, and Thor was a decent watch with an amazing villain. Captain America the First Avenger is probably the best and my favourite Phase 1 MCU film in terms of covering the story, characters, villains, and setup for the Avengers. But that's my opinion. There's just something about a guy who doesn't look like much, who cops a lot of shit and isn't at all a muscle-bound bloke like all the other guys around him, but has a kind, brave and fighting heart who wants to help in the fight in World War II that gets the opportunity to be part of the Super Soldier program and becomes a fighting symbol of America. Captain America is basically the definition of never give up and always fighting for what you believe in. Even when the US government pump him with all the superhero steroids they could find, they still treat him like a marketing character until he decides, fuck it, my friends and fellow Americans are in trouble and they need my help. Just proving everyone wrong that Captain America is the real deal and becoming a massive headache for the Red Skull. The cast and characters are one of the many great aspects of this film. Like, Steve Rogers is an amazing character and his development from zero to literal hero is done perfectly here. Being an inspiration to kids, earning soldiers' respects, all the women want to bone him because he's too bloody sexy, and the character kicking a lot of Nazi asses and cracking skulls with his red, white and blue shield while riding a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, which is the most American way to fight in World War II. Peggy Carter is another great and fan-favourite character who is an action female protagonist and love interest done perfectly. Being capable of fighting her own battles, being the opposite of a damsel in distress, and great authority figure that doesn't take shit from anyone. Colonel Phillips is a great addition as a high-ranking military personnel. Bucky Barnes is more than a sidekick and gets expanded more throughout the MCU. Don't worry, we'll get to that in the next one. Even other characters get heaps of moments to shine, like the young Howard Stark who gives us more details about Tony Stark's father, Dr. Abraham Erskine who created the Super Soldier Serum, Armin Zola as the Red Skull's right-hand man, and the Howling Commandos that fight with Captain America through World War II. But the Red Skull, played amazingly by Hugo Weaving, is one of my favourite villains in the MCU. I mean, he has played Agent Smith in The Matrix and the voice of Megatron in Transformers. So of course Hugo Weaving would suit playing a Nazi who also has the most memorable redhead in cinema since Hellboy and Ron Weasley. Especially that reveal of the Red Skull when Captain America meets him for the first time and we find out he has experimented with the Super Soldier Serum that created Captain America.
If they cut off one head, two more shall take its place. Hail Hydra.
The plot and the story being set in World War II was an amazing idea. Like, we've had superhero movies set in the modern day since the mid-90s and early 2000s, so having this set in the golden age of the 1940s when superheroes were growing in popularity just reminds me of those movies set in the 1930s or 40s era like The Mummy and the original Indiana Jones trilogy, and those 1940s style superhero movies like The Phantom. Anyone remember The Phantom? Anyone? As for the action, there are some great moments with the assassin chase in New York, Captain America rescuing Bucky and the US troops, and the montage of Captain America and the Commandos destroying the Hydra bases, but the only setback is that you do notice the green screen backgrounds and it doesn't feel like the fight sequences are as intense and serious like in the next lot of films. But it's fun seeing blokes getting launched from a giant frisbee. Side note, I love how the Red Skull is developing advanced technology with his science mate, but they're still getting wrecked by the old school World War II weapons and war tactics. Also, remember when the early MCU movies were a bit more violent? I mean, not only you see people get shot and see the exit wound, but also get horribly vaporized with sci-fi weapons. And Marvel fans have the nerve to say DC is too dark for him. As for the suit itself, it's not bad with the World War II aesthetic, but sometimes it does look like he's wearing hockey shoulder pads. But the color scheme I just love in it. But with the remaining moments of the film are a highlight and the most important in the MCU. With the train sequence with Bucky falling to his death, or does he? The final fight between Captain America and the Red Skull on the giant bomber, with the Red Skull transported to God knows where until Avengers Infinity War gave us an answer. Steve and Peggy promising each other to meet up for their date, but Steve has to fly the plane into the ground to avoid Hydra's bombs dropping in New York. I mean, you could just jump out last minute like you do all the time, but anyway, what a touching moment. But while everyone is mourning and honouring Captain America for his sacrifice, turns out Steve was frozen in the ice, where he wakes up and discovers he was frozen for 70 years and is greeted by Nick Fury. The fact that Steve Rogers was frozen alive the whole time and nobody knew that he survived is a sad thought, and now Captain America has to adjust to this new time period, not knowing if his close friends, comrades, or Peggy are even still alive. Anyway, Cap, walk it off, we've got Avengers shit to deal with. Now, I've got to say, what a debut for the first Avenger. It's a combination of a World War II movie, a 40s era adventure while fighting an evil villain, and a throwback to the old school superhero serials and films that walk so the MCU can not only run, but sprint to all the money it can make. And just an amazing cast that become MCU regulars throughout multiple movies, and minor characters getting their own spin-offs and team-up films and TV shows. And speaking of that, if you're a hardcore Marvel fan, there are plenty of Easter eggs and references that you'll see as you do in the MCU that are a nice little nod and hint to what's to come in future MCU films. I can see why I revisit these particular MCU films the most. I mean, I was always a Batman and DC fan since the Tim Burton era, but I occasionally watched X-Men, Blade, and the Spider-Man movies growing up. But when I saw Captain America in cinemas, I was just blown away with how much I loved the character with his fight or die attitude while being just a lovely bloke. And of course, I bought some of the comics after I watched the film. The first Captain America movie is just a lot of fun before everything gets too serious, real bloody quick, and is the final piece Marvel needed before the Avengers made its 2012 release and made all the money it could.
Let's hear it for Captain America!
Anyway, those are my thoughts on Captain America the First Avenger. Let's see what fans and critics think. Well, Captain America the First Avenger has received positive reviews, with Rotten Tomatoes score of 80% for critics, and with an audience score of 75%. The website labelled the film with plenty of pulpy action, a pleasantly retro vibe, and a handful of fine performances. Captain America is a solid old-fashioned blockbuster entertainment. Metacritic rated the film 66 out of 100 based on 43 reviews from critics indicating genuinely favourable reviews. Everyone's favourite film critic Roger Ebert gave a review for the Chicago Sun-Times, which stated, "I enjoyed the movie. I appreciated the 1940s period settings and costumes, which were a break from the usual generic cityscapes. I admired the way that director Joe Johnston propelled the narrative. I got a sense of a broad story rather than the impression of a series of sensational set pieces. If Marvel is wise, it would take this and Iron Man as its templates." And A.O. Scott of the New York Times declared it pretty good fun. Meanwhile, Kurt Honeycutt of The Hollywood Reporter had mixed feelings about the film, writing, "As the last Marvel prequel that includes 2 Iron Man and Incredible Hulk movies before next summer's The Avengers, this one feels perhaps a little too simplistic and routine." Corinne Longworth of The Village Voice gave the film a negative review, calling it a hokey, hacky 2-hour plus exercise in franchise transition and price gouging, complete with utterly unnecessary post-converted 3D. Wow, and I thought Roger Ebert would be giving the negative review. Fans seem positive with the film, with people labelling it as a great origin story and a fun movie to watch. And if you look at the Marvel Phase 1 films, Captain America sits around third in terms of the critics' and fans' reputation. As for the box office, with a budget of $140 million, the film made $370.6 million at the box office. Oh yeah, remember when superhero movies had reasonable budgets and not considered a flop because it didn't make $1 billion? Captain America the First Avenger opened on the 22nd of July 2011 in the United States and earned $4 million in midnight showings, outgrossing other 2011 original superhero films like Thor, Green Lantern, and X-Men First Class. The film opened at the #1 spot in the American and Canadian box office with $25.7 million. It then went on to make $65.1 million, which was the second highest grossing opening weekend for a superhero film in 2011, which was beaten by 2011's Thor, which made $65.7 million. At the time of its release, Captain America the First Avenger became the third highest grossing film set during World War II, after Pearl Harbor and Saving Private Ryan. As for the marketing and merchandise, at the 2011 San Diego Comic-Con, some footage that had been shot in the previous week was shown at the San Diego Convention Center. The first TV advertisement aired during the Super Bowl in 2011 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Green Bay Packers in the United States. Paramount paid $3 million to run the 30-second advertisement, with the full trailer released in March 2011. The world premiere of Captain America the First Avenger was held on July 19, 2011 at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, California, along with the film screening in 2011 San Diego Comic-Con on July 21st. In May of 2011, the USO girls from the film did a performance aboard the USS Intrepid at the Intrepid Sea Air Space Museum as part of the 2011 Fleet Week celebrations in New York City, as well as Paramount promoting the film during an Independence Day celebration hosted by the Chicago White Sox. Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin-Robbins teamed with Marvel, which ran a contest to search for real-life super soldiers. The contest sorted nominations for veterans or active US service persons making a difference where they live or serve. Harley-Davidson Motorcycles was also another paid sponsor promoting the film. Harley-Davidson had a massive boom during World War II, and Captain America is famous for riding motorcycles in the comics. So of course you can't have a Captain America film without Cap riding a motorbicycle. Multiple Harley-Davidsons were used for the film and were the Crossbones models, which were converted into 1942 WLA Army World War II motorcycles, also known as the Liberator, which the partnership would continue through multiple MCU films, including the next 2 Captain America films. Which I guess that promotion worked on me because I love motorbikes and I bought a Harley a couple of years ago. Marvel Comics launched an 8-issue digital comic, Captain America First Vengeance, on the same day as the film's first trailer. Written by Fred Van Lente and featuring a rotation of artists, the story is set in the MCU. Each of the 8 issues focuses on a specific character from the movie, heroes and villains alike, and what brought them to the point where the movie begins. Sega produced a video game tie-in titled Captain America Super Soldier that was released in July 2011 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii and Nintendo DS. And in that same month, Marvel also released a mobile game titled Captain America Sentinel of Liberty. The gameplay is similar and inspired from the Batman Arkham series, which is the greatest superhero game series ever made, Bloody Fight Me, and includes platforming, puzzle solving, and an upgrade system to unlock new attacks and moves. The game received mixed reviews, but was considered the best out of the other MCU tie-in games at the time. And to ironically quote Soulja Boy from the Amazon TV series The Boys, "You're just a cheap knockoff." A toy line was released which was produced by Hasbro's, which included action figures, accessories, vehicles, and a Captain America's shield that shoots foam discs to annoy a little brother or sister. Hasbro will also re-release the action figures in the Collectibles Legends series, as well as LEGO including sets based on the first Avenger movie in the Marvel Superheroes LEGO sets in August 2011, which the Captain made his LEGO debut along with several other Marvel superheroes. Captain America the First Avenger was released by Paramount Home Entertainment on Blu-ray, Blu-ray 3D, and DVD on October 25, 2011. The 3-disc set included the film on Blu-ray in high-definition 3D, yeah, thanks Avatar for giving me a migraine in the cinemas in the 2010s, and in high-definition 2D, as well as standard definition DVD with a digital copy. Special features include over an hour of bonus material, including the short film A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer, a sneak peek of the Avengers, 6 behind-the-scenes features, and deleted scenes with commentary. The physical media release topped the Blu-ray and DVD sales charts in its first week, selling 1.54 million Blu-ray units and 726,000 DVD units. And the film would also be included in multiple box sets, including the 10-disc Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 Avengers Assemble box set in 2013. Now, out of the MCU standalone films, Captain America is the one that feels like it gets better with each installment. The first Avenger movie is a reminder of the golden age of superheroes. It's an amazing throwback to fun adventures of our favourite superheroes saving the world before superhero films and stories got more mature in the years to follow. I mean, superheroes went from returning stolen purses and leaving a friendly smile to breaking criminals' backs and constant screaming. But out of the Marvel superheroes, Captain America is the type of role model that children would want to be when they grow up. The character is a symbol of freedom and bravery, believe in yourself, and never give up no matter how difficult the fight is. And with Captain America ready for the biggest superhero team-up in cinema history in 2012 with the release of the Avengers, the Captain better enjoy the fun while it lasts, because things start to get very serious in Marvel's Phase 2 with the next lot of films, including Captain America the Winter Soldier. But let me know your thoughts on Captain America the First Avenger, and which other superhero films should I look into next? I'll add them to the list. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Is this a test? He's still skinny.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. It really does mean a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do want to see more videos like this, don't forget to hit that notification button. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if there's a movie that you guys would like for me to look at, feel free to comment down below. Until then, I'm As the Pop Culture Viking, and always love pop culture.